Hello there, and thank you for joining us once again on the Citizens Chat Show here on Civic Space TV. I'm your host, Judith Atim, and we're really excited to have you join us in this edition. Today, we want to look at the events that are unfolding in the country, specifically the protest by Uganda's Gen Z, and we want to draw parallels with the developments in Kenya. Joining me, as usual, the usual suspects on the show. From my immediate left, I have Dr. Robert Ojambo. He's the head of the Faculty of History and Political Science at Kyambogo University. Dr. Ojambo, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Also with me is Dr. Sarah Bireete, the Executive Director of the Center for Constitutional Governance. Good afternoon, Sarah, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, and good afternoon, viewers.
Also, Mr. Joseph Othieno, UPC Ideologue. Good afternoon, Joseph.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me, but I am not a suspect, but I know suspects in town.
Last but not least, retired Major Awich Pollar, the Director for External Services with the National Resistance Movement Party. You're most welcome.
Thank you so much, and good evening, viewers.
Well, as you all know, on Tuesday, the much publicized hashtag March to Parliament protest organized by Gen Zs in Uganda took off. A number of arrests were made. We actually have a number of young people, about 70 or even more, who are currently on remand, and they will be produced in court. Most of them are expected to be produced in court on the 30th of July. That's next week. But I just want you to just respond or share your insights or reactions to how the protest was handled. Let's start from that, by the security agencies, the police and the military, in terms of the deployment and all that, and whether it's actually necessary when you look at a peaceful demonstration organized by young, unarmed people. Let me start with you, Robert.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Of course, now we are captured by this Gen Z thing. But for those who read some history, Uganda has been a place where young people have always come up when it is necessary. Not going very far, just in 1930s and 40s, there was these Bataka movements which were in Uganda here and many parts of Kampala. And then the young people who rose against the colonialists in 1945, which produced the likes of Ignatius Musazi and many young Turks who later come to be the founders of the first parties that emerged in Uganda. If you look at the age of most of those leaders who were in those parties, the Congress Party and later UPC, DP. If you look at the age group, it was 30s were the majority and below. That progressed up to the time of independence. I think our Prime Minister was one of the youngest in Africa at the time we're getting independence. He was a young man with a group of young people. So young people have always been huge in the revolution in Uganda. Then come 80s when this group of people go to the bushes of Luwero and Luwero Triangle. Majority of them were young people led by a few old men. And in their words, quotes, liberated the country, but I don't see the liberation that they brought here. I think we shall need another liberator. Then I remember at the time when I was at the university, we had a number of things to struggle against, and it was us who always marched to the parliament. The good news is that then we would be allowed to go. For example, I remember we were very fundamental, people of my age group, for the fight against Article 269. Article 269, which had abolished the activities of political parties in Uganda. And I remember one time we marched as young people, UID and others. And the good thing at that time, police was still Uganda police, not Uganda police force. And Odomel, and Mr. Odomel, I remember, that is I think the second last policeman who was the head of police. Recently, they came Ochora, and there was Kisembo in the middle there. The rest of the men have been soldiers. We were organized at the Freedom Square of Makerere University, and we marched to the parliament and handed our document to Francis Ayume, who addressed us in the parliamentary quadrangle. And we asked him questions, and he said our matter was going to be handled. Then we walked away singing. Others remained there. By one, people had started getting hungry. We rushed back to the halls to go and get food. That's when things were still being managed in a police way. The early 2000s and the late 90s, there came a very good tradition in Uganda, which now we are enjoying, where army men started being the bosses of Uganda police force, beginning with Katumba Wamala. If there is a person who introduced violence in police, was Katumba Wamala, because I observed one time, because at that time I was also still a youth, a young man. We had a demonstration and the policemen shot a young man called Igenyi at UPC, that Uganda House. And the Katumba Wamala came in a few minutes and started, army men with a lot of siasa deceiving us. Oh, this was a mistake. And then came Kaihura. That is when now the Ugandan society got problems. And that is what has produced what you saw on Tuesday, where you cannot differentiate police, army, military, and the like. So in our, these people who are constitutional, now it is very difficult to explain to people who contains and manages public order in Uganda. Is it Uganda police? Is it CFC? Is it military police? Is it goons who are in clothes where you cannot even identify them? So sometimes you are not aware. So the young people, I want first of all say that what the young people were doing is a good thing, and it is something that is happening in the whole of Africa. I told you last time it started in West Africa, now in our neighborhood in Kenya, and it's going to continue. Let nobody be deceived that any intimidation is going to stop them. For example, the nearest that we can remember is the walk to work. If you look at the walk to work, majority of the people who were in that activity were young people between 15 to 35. Those were the majority of the people who were there. Of course, the leadership might have been by some political leaders and so on, but the majority of the people, even if you look at the casualties, because this one I have looked at it in detail, then you remember the problem of the Kabaka going to Bugerere. Again, it was young people. Of course, this one had a ethnic undertones, and many Ugandans were not very comfortable with it. But it showed that young people can rise up against something. Mm-hmm. Then came in 2021. Remember the protests that were there during election. Majority of the people who were casualty and participants were young people. Of course, this time they were even excited that the leader was a young man, and the leader of Nup was a young man, and they were reacting to that. And when you go to Chitalia, some of these young men are still languishing there. I've been wondering what happened to the parliamentary push to push for these people to come out. It has been a very big problem. Mm-hmm. Now, come to our good Tuesday. I really think that the aim, all the intentions were good, but I must say there was some poor organization, in my view. You cannot compare it to the one which happened in West Africa and the one which. But you see, Uganda has gone through a lot of problems. Sometimes you sympathize with anybody who can pick courage to go on the street, because you are going for a demonstration to march to parliament, but you must be prepared as if you are going to Garamba Forest, those days of Konyi, to fight with rebels. And in this case, rebels are security men of your country. They are waiting for you with mambas. They are waiting for you with. I saw a man carrying 3 guns: AK-47, a machine gun, and another shotgun. And I was saying, where is war in this country? These guys, I have not heard that any one of them has declared that he's going to come with a gun. And they are there waiting for you. So these young men who managed to go up to where they were arrested, they are courageous people. In fact, in my view, they are heroes. They are really my heroes. Because I was wondering what would happen to them. I know many of them now are in safe houses and very many places. A number of them were taken to Luzira and other detention houses. I now don't know, what are we going to do as a nation for those young people? Because when you look at them, which crime did they commit? I don't know.
Well, thanks a lot, Robert. Moving on to you, Sarah. And I'd like you to also look at this from the point of view of the mobilization, both online and on the streets physically, but also the way the media has covered this protest, especially the mainstream media, and basically what the response by the state also means for democracy and the future of democracy for this country.
Now that Dr. Ojambo has shared the historical background, let me start with the legal framework for this. For 29 years, we have had a constitution that has carried the International Bill of Rights and the Chapter 4 of the Constitution. And the key fundamental right for citizens to freely participate in their governance is enshrined under Article 29 of the Constitution. That's freedom of conscience, expression, association, speech, religion, movement, and others. This has been the most abused right in the framework of the 1995 Constitution by President Museveni and his government, to the extent that the only right among those rights that I've mentioned that has been freely enjoyed by Ugandans is freedom of religion. If you want to start a church, declare yourself a bishop the next day, archbishop the next, and the pope. Nobody will bother with you. But you come to the real governance rights, freedom of speech, freedom of association and for the political parties, freedom of expression, freedom to protest, demonstrate, petition. All that is mentioned there peacefully in that Article 29. The government has consistently trampled on that right of Ugandans. The issue at hand is corruption, and young people want to have their footprint on the fight against corruption. Article 1 of the Constitution guarantees or states that all power belongs to the people, who shall determine the way they want to be governed, including choosing leaders and expressing their wishes, demands, and the desires that the leaders should do. Article 7 of the Constitution talks about the duties of a citizen. And among those duties is a duty to fight corruption. And then Article 29, the freedom to freely protest, petition, or demonstrate in Uganda as an inherent right. Article 20, Clause 2 of the Constitution makes it mandatory for all state institutions to protect and promote fundamental rights and freedoms. So you have a country or a regime where the ruling government usurps the sovereignty of the people and gets away with murder all the time. Because the right to demonstrate in this country has not been enjoyed under President Museveni's leadership. There are only fewer people that have come on the streets. You are either coming from NRM headquarters, like we saw when the Red Cows escorted the women protesting against Mama Mbabadu's declaration to run for the ticket. The flag under NRM, the Cows escorted them, even the police came and right after their march, gave them a lift back to their offices. Those enjoyed the right. Then we also saw students protesting in support of ECOP when the international community banks had pulled out. Then the police escorted them. They were even saluting as they took the petition to EU. These are the two peaceful protests that I've seen under 38 years of NRM's leadership. The rest of the demonstrations, marching to present a petition, NRM treats Ugandans as criminals, as terrorists, as bandits, usurping their sovereignty. Sovereignty has three elements: the boundaries of a country, the laws of a country, and the people, who must self-determine how they will be governed. So when you have a regime closing the voice of the people and claiming to be Democrats, why don't you remove that cover, the mask of calling yourselves Democrats, and you declare a dictatorship like Idi Amin? You know, I am happy with Idi Amin for one reason. He was always honest with Ugandans in his brutality, in his dictatorship. He never masqueraded as a Democrat. Nobody would even dare say protest. We knew how we were governed. But you have a Siamese of Idi Amin claiming to be a Democrat and trampling on the rights of Ugandans, fundamental rights and freedoms. There has been an argument that rights have limitations. The Constitution is very clear in Article 43 and 44 limitations. Those limitations must be what is justifiable and justifiable in a democratic, free and justifiable in a democratic society.
Amen.
That is the underline in one of those articles. Yeah. The court in the Andrew Mwenda case and the Onyango Bo, the Constitutional Court further defined what is justifiable in a free and democratic society in terms of limitations. But you have the junta, which sits somewhere and determines what they think is the limitation, and the president warning young people that they are playing with fire. If they think of enjoying their fundamental right, they are playing with the fire. So what democracy are we talking about? And this is the same mentality that we carry towards elections. Because elections are about freedom of speech, expression, association, conscience in determining how people want to be governed. The same mentality will be taken into closing rallies during the political campaign. The military, the police, who think, by the way, I have stated that in the order of hierarchy, under President Museveni, the army comes above the constitution.
Yeah.
President Museveni and the army are above the constitution. They make the constitution number 3. They think they are above the constitution and they don't operate in accordance with the constitution. So you have a situation where young people, whether inspired by Kenya or I think for me that is secondary, or people draw inspiration from somewhere. The religious people will draw from the Bible. The pagans will draw from their smaller gods. People draw inspiration from all sorts of issues. Others watch music, draw inspiration. Others are inspired by poems, creativity. So saying that these people are inspired by is not a crime. Everybody is inspired by another. Some people are inspired by Chinua Achebe to become poets and whatever. Everybody draws inspiration. Some people are inspired by their fathers, mothers, sisters. So you can't say that because you are drawing inspiration from Kenya, therefore you are terrorists. That is crap. So you have this kind of situation, and come Tuesday, no, Monday evening, Uganda became a mini Kosovo. I'm referring to Kosovo because of the war and what we used to watch on the screens. So you have all sorts of military vehicles. These snipers, people hide. These people hide in bushes who come with beards reaching there. Because from the emergence of Bobi Wine, these people made a replica of Rastas who they mix
with the citizens.
Yes, and they were thinking that then the Bobi Wine team would dominate the protests. So in the evening, if you look at those pictures, you would see those Rastas with the beards like animals. On some of them on the streets. So the purpose was that if then they see something like ghetto youth, that these youth should march, these mafias of theirs should march, the ghetto youth and then cause chaos, and then you would see, like the people who were beating police in the 2020 demonstrations. They were never citizens, they were officers. Then you saw them wrestling with the policemen, then you say, but these demonstrators are very violent. All of that was stage managed. So, when they didn't see the political leaders, they didn't know now how to achieve stands. So they kept them somewhere. But all this evil plan to just jeopardize the enjoyment of fundamental rights of people.
But also, sorry to cut you short. I was actually following the comments that these young people were tweeting, and a number of them actually said, "Look, we are being detained and we're being beaten and told to confess that we were sent on the streets by Bobi Wine, but I've refused not to do that, and I'm still being beaten some more." And then their phones were taken off. Those are some of the confessions that we were seeing playing out on social media, on Twitter, on Tuesday.
Their plan.
Yes.
That was the plan all along. So that shows you a mindset of an establishment that is a dictatorship wearing a mask of a democrat, which I would be comfortable if they can put off, so that we deal with them in their own nature. There are also other confessions of torture that have come up. As these children get the bail, we shall get to know more of what transpired, and it is a great shame.
Thanks a lot. Joseph, let's move on to you. And I know you also wanted to look at it from the media coverage aspect of it. When you look at how, because we're drawing parallels, how the media, for instance, have been covering the protests in Kenya, and how we are seeing the media in Uganda cover these protests, apart from, let's say Daily Monitor and the nation media platforms, I would say, we don't see much of the other detailed information we are getting is actually from social media. Apart from primetime news, we are not actually seeing much on the other mainstream media. But what does this tell us? Sarah has just been giving us the legal perspective, what the law says about freedom of expression, freedom of the press, and so on. Do you think the media is, the portrayals of this protest or the coverage is a reflection of the deeply felt censorship, either on the media generally or also on individual journalists?
No, holistically as a nation, this is a nation captured, this is a state captured by NRA, and it's total. And the fourth media, the media, is actually the most captured, amongst the most captured elements of the 5 states in this country. And I've said it again and again and again. That's one of the reasons why brilliant staff that this particular forum is one of the few, open, objective, and fair spaces. Just unfortunately online, and partly because of the cost of internet and the fact that not many people in rural parts of Uganda have got access to phones and systems that can use civic space would be the destination of choice across the country. And so may it be, and perhaps the future UPC government would make sure that is actually possible, because we make it very cheap, you know, and for Kampala we provide free internet, you know, and if we did it like that, then we shall have liberated Ugandans. But look, the CME's relatives of NRA, who are basically means people, you know, did as Sarah stated. But one thing I want to say though also is that to be fair to NRA, there were 2 demonstrations that were not blocked, in which I was a party in the early 80s. That is in the early part of NRA in 1987. I've said it here, Sarah. When we demonstrated from Makere successfully, you know, and that was one when America bombed Libya. So as Makere's students, and we joined by Kyambogo and other high institutions learning around Kampala, around Kampala, we successfully demonstrated from campus up to...
Of course you see there Libya.
But that's the thing. So I'm just adding, but for a reason. So that was successful. And then number 2, when Museveni was trying to play double with his Anglo-American friends when Samora Machel was killed. Again, we thought that Museveni had taken long before coming out to take a position against the Boers who had killed Samora Machel. You know, we demonstrated and it was successful. But absolutely right. Since then, it is Z.
The second one was which?
The one when Samora Machel was killed.
Yeah, but those were the people who helped NRA fight.
But by the way,
Okay. There was still NRA, although you participated.
But by the way, actually, very interestingly, Sarah, part of our argument at the time, although some of us did not like the link, you know, we were saying in principle that Samora Machel was an African liberator, and in any case, even helped your bunch, you know, to come and break our neck. And now Samora has seen it with the Boers. But by then, NRA had already started playing geopolitical, strategic kind of stuff, trying to play safe.
How do you protest? Because they had also an association.
Precisely. Anything beyond that, Z to date.
Yeah.
Fast forward, Article 269. No, it was not picked up in the latter bit. Chagulanyi, Museveni knows, you know, and this will come out. And young Ugandans just need to add into their numbers. From 1986, part of our continued campaigns was for the dismantling of the monolithic polity, which is the no-party state. So Ugandans had been actively campaigning. But to emphasize this point, you young Ugandans, can you imagine that when the 1995 NRA Constitution was promulgated, confirming that Article 269, which was part of the legal notice number 1, Chagulanyi was just about 1 year old? So you can actually see how long you've been abused as young citizens of this Republic of Uganda by NRA systematically. But we can't go into the details. So that's the context. But where are we? If you looked at the manner in which the Kenyan media addressed this thing from the beginning, fair enough, you would say that there's a section of the media that favored Ruto versus the other. But generally, it was as level-headed and as objective and as detailed as possibly it could be at the time. To the extent that I told this program, Judith, and we discussed this a few weeks ago, that that impressive 3-man, unfortunately no woman, panel of journalists who grilled Ruto. We prayed here while you were away that may you have that opportunity, you, Judith, amongst another female plus, you know, maybe 2 female journalists plus 1 male, you know, to have the opportunity to go to State House and grill Mr. Museveni the manner in which those guys grilled Ruto. So that is a manifestation partly in the quality of journalism, but partly in terms of the relative openness of the Kenyan media, or, you know, in relation to Ugandan media. And as I rightly say, you know, why only the nation media plus, you know, and what about the others and where are they? I think it's possibly now less about the media, whether they like it or not. Just like it is less about the judiciary, whether they like it or not. Just like it's less about the parliament, whether they like it or not. Can you imagine that before we came on air, I think Judith and Sarah were kindly informing us of how all of a sudden now the Sisi Kubo petition has suddenly found traction with numbers? No, you young guys, your power works. Your numbers count. Continue blip blip, blip, until you reach a critical number. These guys will listen to you. So likewise, with or without the media. And although it's also suggested, that comparisons are drawn in terms of numbers. And notwithstanding the fact that some NRA pushed people in social media, simply say, oh, a handful of them, look at the others who are pulling you. No, whatever the case, it must be confirmed that eventually the thing hit the national stage. So it's no longer about the numbers of people who turned up, but the fact that it's actually a national stage. And do you know what, Comrade Museveni? I have good news for you. This thing is not for turning back. This thing is not for turning back. So what are we saying? The media that is progressive, that is open, that is nationalist, must continue engaging. But I think the young people of this country, just as in another program, a panelist, sufficiently educated us to say that, look, this is not about young people, but about all the people of Uganda. But granted, massively led beautifully by young guys, that these are matters that affect all the people of Uganda. So all of us Ugandans must continue to support the process of demanding and demanding and demanding for change to basically kill the impunity that has prevailed. But I just want one small thing just to conclude this introduction. A massively impressive American lefty, Howard Zinn, he's a philosopher and a historian, died a long time ago. But this is what he said about civil disobedience. He said, civil disobedience is not our problem. It's not our problem. Our problem is civil obedience. Come on, guys. Our problem is the people all over the world who've obeyed the dictates of leaders, and millions have been killed because of disobedience. Our problem is that people are obedient all over the world in the face of poverty, starvation, and stupidity, and war, and cruelty. Mm-hmm. Our problem is that people are obedient while the jails are full of petty thieves. Petty thieves, and the grand thieves are running the country. That's our problem. In my opinion, that is 100% manifestation of Ugandans. Wake up, Ugandans. Young Ugandans, keep going.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks a lot. Major Pollar, let me come to you now. Robert here has given us a historical background, taken us back in time and brought us to where we are right now. Sarah has given us the legal perspective and what the law provides, and Joseph has been looking at it from the social point of view. I would like to take you back to Tuesday, actually Monday evening. When you look at the way the government, the state, mobilized its security apparatus to respond to these protests, do you think this was actually called for?
Thank you. It was called for. It was indeed called for. Now, the basics. Does NRM or government recognize there's corruption in Uganda? Yes, it does. Does NRM recognize that there's need to fight corruption? Yes, it does. Where is the point of departure? The point of departure is the methods of doing it and the fear for other interests manipulating through that window. But otherwise, if it is about corruption, we agree, we recognize it. Even without Transparency International methodology. You see, the methodology of Transparency International, which ranks governments, is that it takes it in perceptions. For example, if a country like Malawi decided not to write on their newspaper about corruption, it will be ranked as there's no corruption. But for us, we are saying...
If the media does not talk about corruption, you think people will not talk about it when they experience it, when they go to police stations?
That is what I'm coming to. What I'm saying is Transparency International, they rank all the countries in the world by order of corruption. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you their methodology is perception as reported. Meaning that if a country decided to keep quiet, it will be ranked as not corrupt. But I'm saying NRM has said leave corruption, leave transparency alone with their method. For us, we are facing the disease on. Whether transparency doesn't rank us, we are saying our investigation proves there is corruption. and there is need to fight it. So that is what I'm saying. Therefore, President Museveni even himself said, if we need to organize a demonstration about corruption, we can organize it. He actually suggested that to avoid, first of all, import of other interest, and to avoid destroying properties of others, why don't you take a Sunday and demonstrate as much as you want? Does this show that there is a move against demonstration for corruption?
A few years ago, there was a march in which he actually was, I think the head, the chief guest or the chief marcher or something like that. But why haven't we seen that translate into a reduction in corruption if a march alone is actually going to help us get rid of this vice?
But even then, now then you should be questioning those who wanted to go on Tuesday. If the question is a march can't reduce it, then you should have given to the question of the people marching on Tuesday.
No.
Yes, it is a march.
It is a
Then
march
you
to
ask
say
them.
it is wrong.
Yes, even the other one was the same. Even the other one was the same.
We are not satisfied with what you are doing.
In fact, you are answering my question. My question is, if NRM recognizes this corruption, if that was my opening speech, and if it does recognize that we need to fight it, therefore the methodology is what I was telling you, that as you are saying a march doesn't solve, then we have other ways to solve it. Now, why did I say the response was appropriate? Colleagues, we may have our interest, political interest here and there. But if a country breaks down into anarchy, we all stand to lose. And the president is the consumer of all intelligence. There is abounding evidence that demonstrations that are organized is not merely for anti-corruption. I have repeatedly said here that there are some leaders who have told people that I am not going to go to the ballot box again. Why? Because I will not win. And they have not stopped there. They have said, we shall use other means. Leaders have told people, leaders have set time limit to their followers, that within this time, I will remove this government. And even their followers have challenged them that you deceived us, you're going to remove Museveni. How far? This is part of it. It's not the presentation. The presentation is the march against corruption, but that is not. So for me, for the state to come up and preserve Uganda, not to decline in anarchy like Somalia, like even what we're seeing in Kenya, that is ugly and not presentable, I am okay with it. And I've always said that what do we need to do even when others want to use the window of corruption for their other interests? Our friends have talked about governance and constitutionalism. I have here and again said that while power belongs to the people and they can do it in any way they want, the only survival tendency is to meet the interests and the needs of the people. And President Museveni said this in his speech. He said, among one thing, he said, all of us might have watched. He said, I am told a price of a bunch of matoke costs 3,000 from the farmers. They said yes. Then he asked from the people around, how much does it cost in Kampala? They said 10,000. He says we have struggled to ensure there's production. We have struggled to make sure food is as cheap as possible. And you come to distort, to disrupt the society, to bring anarchy under the window of a march to corruption. It can't be. And that is when he said you are playing with violence. He said you are playing with fire not because you are marching against corruption. He said you are playing with violence because you are using the window of march against corruption for ulterior motives. Okay? Now, there is the talk about import of the army. The army, under the constitution, is provided for to be called in by police in case of support. And that is the constitutional provision under which the army comes. And if we were really for us to protect and preserve the integrity and the oneness of this country, is paramount. I have seen in other states where the judiciary crosses to the arms of government and orders the executive what to do, and the executive, the judiciary tells the executive, don't deploy here, don't use that.
Yes.
It is their jurisdiction, we wish them well. You have a person supposed to protect law and order and offers to resign. For us, we are saying we are determined not to have the Kampala of 1985, where one part is controlled by forces X, another side is Muyenga is controlled by forces Y, Nakawa is controlled by this. You really need a visa to go around Kampala. No.
But that was one of
So,
you were part of that.
So, we are determined to protect the integrity. But the fight of corruption must increase. It will increase. We have the laws, we have the courts, anti-corruption courts. We have said we're even going to develop anti-corruption prison. So the war will continue. But the hiding under a corruption march to bring instability is what cannot be. Okay, now it is even coming out. There's now already views saying the money that came up from outside to organize the march has been misappropriated by the leaders. This already shows that this intention is not by our youth. If it was our youth demonstrating against corruption, why would the money come from outside? Sarah had talked about the cabinet struggling for bananas, and those youth who claim to be clean now struggling for the same money.
Pollar, are you saying
What is the difference?
Are you saying Ugandan youth do not have pressing issues that can motivate them enough to get to the streets, even without financial inducements?
Say it again.
I'm saying, are you trying to suggest that Ugandan youth do not have issues that are pressing them enough, that they need someone to first pay them to protest? Is that what you're trying to say?
Those are your words. But what I can say, if it is about the pressing needs, the society is so dynamic. Even tomorrow, there will be needs, not only about corruption. There could be need for anything else. Either environmental health, it will need a demonstration. Either corruption, as we said, it will need a demonstration. There are various needs. So for me to assume that any one time youth don't have needs, that would be unscientific. A society is not hard and frozen. A society is dynamic. Therefore, needs as and when will always arise and will always need to be addressed by the youth. And I repeatedly say, it is incumbent on the government to detect and identify the needs of the problem, the needs of the youth, so that you solve them, to not make them go on the street. So problems are there. Now, I have heard again the violation of rights, and then how some rights can be managed or whatever it is, using the legal term. But I like to draw attention to the viewers that under our constitutions, there are rights that you can't touch, and NRM has not touched any. And amazingly, out of those rights, right to life is not one of them, and right to food is not one of them. Meaning other rights can be managed. For example, Article 44 says non-derogatable rights. One, nobody, not even Museveni, has a right to say Okello or Kurut is my slave. It is prohibited in totality. Two, in the past, if Okello had stolen, the magistrate could make a ruling in court record that you are sentenced to 10 claims and you get a scurry of the local government to administer in court. No more. That is violence. Three, habeas corpus. If your husband was arrested and not seen, you have a right to go to court and say, bring the body here. Corpus means corpse. That's why you talk of body corporate and what. The last is hear him. Hear. Even if you have twins and Okello says they are slapped to chain, please hear both sides. But the other rights, like demonstration, is governable under a democratic and a fair system. The definition as Sarah tries to give is according to the facts as it is. So, therefore, if you have intelligence information which will indicate that the march is under cover of march against corruption, you have the intelligence, you surely will say, no, we are not going to have this march because you have to organize this march. Like the president suggested, okay? Like the president suggested a very organized march against corruption. Good enough, we have already accepted here that that march has ever taken place. So there is no blanket issue about rights. There is no blanket issue about rights. Nobody should deceive you. If somebody commits an offense punishable by death, it will be taken to Luzira and the right to life will be removed. If right to life can be removed from somebody and hanged in Luzira, what is not difficult by managing a right of freedom of expression by demonstration? Therefore, I am happy that we are here talking in peace. Because if we had allowed the demonstration as intended by foreigners whose money has been eaten, I'm glad it was eaten. The monies they have supplied for demonstration, and now they are crying. If their money is eaten, and I'm happy. But the city is peaceful. We are one Uganda. We are moving, and the fight for against corruption must intensify. I am glad that Parliament has now reached the signature. So who says that NRM is is pro-corruption? The point here is, how do you weed out other interests under the cover of march against corruption?
I've never had Comrade Awich this loud. I have never, and we've sat together and side by side with each other for a very long time. And there is another space in which we're panelists, so we're good. I've never had Comrade Awich in this. Okay. But look, Comrade Civic, I think you're doing too much in this. No, very quickly. The idea that there may be some money is coming from outside. We've got Ugandans in the diaspora. They are the number one, producers of forex here. They'll have brothers, sisters, nieces, nephews, and children abroad to give me money to facilitate. After all, this hard economy in which to work in president's office, you've got to be a member of Museveni's family. It's an obvious common sense. So the fact that people are supporting us, who are supporting people who are marching to Kampala, and they have money happens to come from abroad. And in any case, Comrade Awich hasn't really necessarily shown it to us. And number two, these guys, man, these guys can be very cheeky. If
you think it is Uganda, the real owners will cry.
These guys are very cheeky. Do you know what? Museveni got money from Tiny Rollins, a British dubious guy whom Obote had refused to corruptly sell our national assets. Them. Number two, Gaddafi, supported these bandits. They did, didn't they? And we've talked about these other things. The Marshals, including the Tanzanians, were those Ugandans? What hypocrisy. And then finally, the idea that no, Museveni says, well, keep quiet because we're giving you services. People are saying after 40 years, Museveni's regime is full of thieves, starting from State House, his office, followed by his deputies, up to 22 of his ministers, And you're saying Ugandans who don't have access to medical services, education, health, and other provisions, railway stations knocked down, those which were built by UPC, and they've not built even a single one, should not go ahead and demonstrate. And they're saying we need to have more time. These funny guys went to the bush after 6 weeks in 1981. What had happened?
I want us to move on. I want us to move on to the next round of this discussion. Today, this afternoon, I think more arrests were made. Some other young people have actually been arrested even yesterday. But what turn do you think this protest is going to take? Do you think this is going to be sustained, or when you look at all the threats that are coming from right from the head of state to the security apparatus, this is going to fizzle out? And if so, what would be the consequences?
Yeah, my thinking is just that the protests have not yet begun.
Good.
This is just to test the waters. And I don't think the young people in Uganda are fools that they would go to be arrested. And they stop there everything ends. Remember, this is a continuation of what was started in 2011. Many people don't normally want to know that revolution was a big thing in the history of, say, let's just restrict at NRM, that walk to work thing. Of course, many people politicized it, but remember that was a walk that resulted mainly from the economic hardships that had come as a result of the economic slump in the world, where the prices of things were very expensive, the price of oil almost went by 100%, and many things were happening, not only in Uganda, but in the whole world. It was even more serious in Europe. For us, sometimes we are cushioned by this banana economy, where people go and cut a banana from their shamba and they cook it with only water and eat. So you remember the demonstrators then who were walking to work. And that's how they coined the walk to work, because it was very expensive to pay for transport to Kampala, maybe from Namamveo, Mukono, wherever. So people said they wanted to walk. Of course, the state mimed so many of them. Many died. A number of them are even still in prison up to today.
Seriously?
Yes. From 2011, yes. We have young men who are sentenced and they're in prison. Others, in fact, were remanded. They just keep remanding them. Ugandans forget very fast. Many Ugandans may not know that majority of the young men who are arrested in Kalangala, in 2021, are still in Chitalia. They are still in Chitalia. Some have not even been identified where they are. And therefore, young men have never kept quiet. Of course, the corruption, this is not the first time corruption is where it is in Uganda. You remember in 1994 with the privatization thing, Norbert Mao was one of the, Norbert Mao, Kelelu Chamuzi, Winnie Byanyima, and that group, when they were against that privatization, I don't know whether it was a bill or something, and later they privatized. In the privatization, I normally tell my students, it ended up into grabatization. Instead of privatizing, people grabbed. And Museveni's courtyard here is at a very big, was at a very big play. For example, you remember Divinity Union. There was something here called Divinity Union. Salim Salizi business company. Much of the money and much of the companies like Uguma, like Nightingale, there was an attachment to Divinity Union, and these have since collapsed. They are not there. And therefore, it started creating, if you remember, the young men at the university then were demonstrating against those
and women, young men and women,
on a daily basis. Madam Moderator, I don't think this is the end. It is just the beginning. I know young men are planning, and like Museveni is their coach, majority of them. Museveni is their coach, keeps telling them how they lived under the difficulty times of Amin, and how he managed to sneak out and inside the country.
Blackmail.
The only thing that young men may not do, they are not.
He's the one inspiring them.
Yes, they are not silly. They may not go to the bush, but I know they are going to learn ways of how to beat the security systems, like the Kenyan young men did. The Kenyan young men, by the time by the time they hit the street, they had done proper mobilization. The young men in Kampala still have an issue. You cannot sustain a demonstration just concentrating in Kampala. I have been telling young men that Uganda is one of the countries with very few policemen. And that's why walk to work almost succeeded. Just wake up one morning and the young men are in Arua, they're in Busia, they're in Kabale, they're in Kasese, they're in all these places. I tell you, on Tuesday at Kyambogo, we did not have police officers. All were withdrawn to
Seriously?
the
Yeah.
business center.
Mm.
In fact, we were only
There were
under
one
the
or
mercy of security
So
guards
if
and
these
so
guys
on.
wanted to go to the bush, they would have picked those guns.
Yeah, so I want to assure you that the young men are not sleeping. And for me, I am not inciting them.
Well done, young people.
I
Well
am not
done.
inciting them. It is simple. It is very simple. What these young men are demanding are not very difficult things to do. And we need to pick from that perspective.
Oh, okay, thank
The
you.
young men are demanding that one, the Speaker of Parliament resigns. Because they think that he's surrounded in this corruption emblem. And therefore, the Parliament can no longer be a place where corruption can be fought because they are already suspects. They were demanding that this NRM and the political party immediately start reforms to reduce on the number of members of Parliament. This is a cry that has been made by so many people. How can you have a country like Uganda with a budget of now a concocted budget of 72 trillion, and you have more than 500 MPs waiting for a salary every month and allowances every day? And therefore, there is a factor tree of those MPs. They have assistants, they have, I don't know who serves them, clerks, and all those things. Number three, they are demanding that since Parliament has become an attraction of everybody, and it has now become a transaction center, you need to make this place unattractive for people to go there. And they are proposing that let every MP take home 3 million
shillings.
shillings.
Yes.
And that has been my thinking. We should be aspiring to go to Parliament to serve our people, not to go there and earn. And if that era came, I may reconsider my opinion to become an MP. Because I normally feel that we should not go to Parliament to make money. And that's why they have become transactors. The young men are also demanding, now they have added, that police reduces on its brutality. Whoever does not see the police, that the police is very brutal, and condones that, saying, oh, if you don't do that, it will degenerate into problems and we turn like Somalia. I don't know, those who watch TV, how that poor man who was got in Kampala recently at Parliament with a placard was thrown in a vehicle. Sometimes you wonder, are these policemen Ugandans? Or they are foreigners who have come here to kill our people? This man was very calm. When they surrounded him, he did not even protest. He gave in. They walked with him. He did not even struggle. People can go and look at these pictures. He walked to the vehicle. These goons carried the man and threw him upside down, and he landed with his head. I said, now, are these monkeys or human beings?
Today they've undressed the woman.
Who commands these people? There was a young lady who was very peaceful. A young lady, really, a fine lady. You don't see her riotous at all. She was dressed well, very calm, saying, we don't want corruption. I'm telling you the way the man handled this young lady and went and pushed her in this Nalfenya, they call it Nalfenya van. That van, if members of Parliament were good to us, it needs to be banned in this country. It takes us back to the history of apartheid. And maybe some of you who may not know, most of these members you see in Kampala here were imported from South Africa. These were members which were used against anti-apartheid protests. Go and read about them. So, this country, we study history, and many of us get angry on how the apartheid regime treated Africans in South Africa. We have apartheid here. We have apartheid regime here. So me, I think The only thing I would advise the youth is that they need to be careful. They need to be careful. They have a chance to live longer than Museveni. Museveni, even if he does what? Even if Museveni becomes miraculous and goes and to the Pope and the Pope blesses him and he doesn't have 40 years here. He cannot get 40 years here given our life expectancy. I don't think he can reach 120 years. So I want to urge you that be careful. Be careful, organize yourselves well, and make sure that remain. You see, if you listen to Major, they are suspecting that you are going to become violent. Please don't become violent. Remain peaceful. History is going to judge these men, judge their children, judge their grandchildren.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Sarah, moving on to you, still on the issue of, on the question of what turn this protest may take, whether it can be sustained, whether it will be sustained or not. But bearing in mind that also when you look at the narrative from the state before this protest actually was taken onto the streets, and the last few days that we're seeing. The narratives that the state is carefully shaping, of course. If you look at the hashtag, Kenya is not Uganda, branding protesters as traitors. There's also that narrative that the issues in Kenya are not the same as the issues in Uganda, which is clearly false. It's a false narrative. And what Major is saying here, that, okay, now there are these allegations of money being used as inducements to actually have young people on protests. We don't have the facts about this, and I'm sure in the next few days we should actually know whether indeed this is true or false. I'm sure that the facts will come out. Where do you think we're heading with this protest? What turn do you think it's going to take?
Well, the protests started peacefully. And on cameras, apart from a few incidences where I saw like 5 myself, where the police brutalized protesters during illegal arrests. Then we saw the charge of idle and disorderly that was nullified by the Constitutional Court in 2022 in the Atim petition, unanimously by all judges, and government has interfered. So it's a shame to see the lawyers who work with government in several departments, starting with police, DPP, and the magistrates, that they are not informed of legal developments in the country, like constitutional decisions that struck off idle sections of the law. So it's very ashaming, and maybe the people who are involved in the drafting, sanctioning, and detention of about 60 protesters on that non-existent charge of idle and disorderly should be retired in disgrace from this government. Then we saw, of course, by evening, we started seeing confessions of torture. And it's like AIGP Yakagawa has coached the police, which I don't know whether everybody is really a police person and whether the army has now moved out, to pretend before the cameras that they are professional and then torture people in
Behind the
where
scenes.
cameras are not. And that will be followed up, I'm sure. And it's important to bring the torturers and abusers of Ugandans in government institutions to book.
We shall.
Through enforcement of the Human Rights Enforcement Act, where officers can be taken to court in their individual capacities. We have had a struggle for, police claiming that they have power to authorize or unauthorize public gatherings. First was the Mwanga Chuvumbi petition against Section 23 of the Police Act, where police were taking advantage of the vague drafting of that provision as if they have power to authorize or deny public gatherings, which doesn't exist. It was struck off. When it was struck off, the NRM, in its criminal nature, violated Article 92 of the Constitution that prohibits any legislation that attempts to defeat a court judgment, and reintroduced Section 8 of the Public Order Management Act, attempting to give police powers to authorize or deny public gatherings, including demonstrations. It was again struck off by the Constitutional Court. But the criminal element has remained, and the Attorney General wrote to the Supreme Court, not even in a memorandum of appeal and an application for stay of execution, by mere letter, that stay execution. That is illegal. The procedure for staying execution is you file a notice of appeal, you file grounds of appeal, and then you apply for stay of execution. But a mere letter, dear sir, madam, as if it is a love letter, and then the judiciary shamelessly admits such illegal letters on the court record. So that is the criminal nature, to usurp the powers of the people to demonstrate, petition, or protest against any public matter. So coming from that background, you see a consistent criminal element of dictatorship that I linked to the Siamese element of Idi Amin. And it's documented. And future generations will read about this. So you cannot sugarcoat this with the lovely words that it is not true. It is documented legally and otherwise through parliament, answered courts, and even in practice. So when you come from that, you have the youth. I know many people have been talking of the numbers. These youth who have showed up to demonstrate are heroes.
That's correct.
Against that demonstration of military might and cowardice, as if the government was fighting terrorists. The equipment that you cannot unleash against ADF for years. The equipment that you could not unleash against Konye. You unleash it against children in our streets.
Yes.
Taking away their sovereign rights. What kind of cowards do we have in leaders in this country? Everybody sees, you bring even those vehicles that had no covers for snipers all on the streets, as if you are fighting, I don't know what kind of invasion. Even when the Israelis tried to come here, such might was not shown.
No.
But you unleash it against poor children of this country that are fighting corruption. Shame.
That's correct.
So when you see this background, the continuing now today, police has been a bit brutal, and I think we need to take them on one by one and knock them out of the police. Knock them out of the police uniform because they don't deserve it. So that's the update I got.
So before you go, let me just read something, a few lines from
From the president's response.
Yes.
Yes, maybe if I may touch on the president's response, that the president has responded in a letter or in his, infamous things of Diabazukuru.
Yes, that's the one. That's the one I am referring to.
That patronizing nature, Diabazukuru. Bazukuru, whom you are treating like war criminals. You take these things and go and fight Israel, which is killing Palestine, if you are in the mood for blood. So you have this, the president saying that he had information that there were criminal intentions behind the protests funded by foreigners. Where the president is the biggest consumer of information, especially security information in this country. I don't have access to what he has accessed. But do I believe it? Because, this is the usual tagline. When there is, a claim by Ugandans to redeem their democratic rights, always the word foreigner cannot miss. You are funded by foreigners, you are funded agents. So even when it is true, like when you have a habitual liar, even when they are being just and they are genuinely in distress looking for help, it will take time to believe them. So we have had this song of foreigners over time. criminalizing the work of NGOs, criminalizing everyone, criminalizing generally dissent in this country. So it's difficult to believe, but I don't have access to the briefs he has. And he says he has evidence that we shall see it in court.
When
So
when those arrested are being tried,
Yes,
I am actually
I'll be
interested
looking forward.
in that sentence. To me, it reads as if the intention is for this case to go to full trial.
I wouldn't mind.
I can assure you it
In
will
the
never
fight,
reach even the first
If
mention.
these people, if the president's cases have never gone for full trial, you think this idle and disorderly and non-existent charges what will go to full trial? It is a lie.
But if it does, do you think
But
those
it's
charges
how
will
people-
actually be genuine charges, or because he's already, I mean, the thinking is, if you read between the lines, you could maybe think the charges could actually be trumped up at some point.
I want to give the president the benefit of doubt as a fountain of honor. But I can bet on this show that you don't charge people with the charges, falsified charges, which are non-existent, like idle and disorderly. And you think such a trial will go on. Because you have to first now set these people free, and then maybe rearrest for which offense.
But sir,
Two, what crime did they commit?
but Sarah, maybe I'm not following the government or NRM way of dealing with the public arrests. I remember
Of
this
criminalizing
young
dissent.
man who went and burnt a police post in allegedly in Natete police post. I was seated with some very senior lawyers who were saying that if this young man was to be convicted, you would not charge him what you did. They charged him of criminal capital offenses. Capital, very capital. The first one was treason. The second one was I don't know what. And that person was advising that if they had charged this man of arson or destruction of property, but he later told me that that is not the aim. The aim is normally to scare you, even if the thing succeeds or does not succeed. That's why majority of these cases we have talked about, Vesige and others, cannot succeed, even in these corrupt courts of ours, because you have given them a sentence that has a maximum punishment, either to be killed or what. And you know those cases, to succeed, you must convince court beyond reasonable doubt.
Treason has never succeeded. We don't have any successful conviction for treason. But as I conclude, I want to give the president the benefit of doubt that maybe he has information that we don't have. Two, I want to remind the president that Article 99 of the Constitution about executive authority in Uganda bestows upon him a duty to protect the Constitution. And he's not going to protect the Constitution selectively. We demand that he sets free the right to demonstrate in this country.
Thanks a lot, Sarah. Over to you, Joseph. Your insights on the trajectory in which this protest could go.
It's already tragic enough. I hope it doesn't get any worse. And I think what this NRA regime has survived on has been impunity. I know that they survived also on benefit of the doubt and excess, blank check from a cross-section of the population for a very long time. And I know that they massively existed. And the only reason why NRA regime survived for the first 20 years of its life, Mr. Museveni, you know it, is because of those foreigners, those terrible foreigners who were backing you while you're breaking the necks of our people, particularly northern and eastern Uganda. And those other people disappearing in Kampala. Mr. Museveni, what happened under your regime? You know it, backed by foreigners. And Mr. Museveni, you know what I'm talking about. Mr. Museveni is playing the game of fear, unleash fear on the people of this country. During a visit to the police headquarters, I told officers at the then Inspector General of Police's office that, look, we recognize the role of the police, granted, detection and prevention of crime. So if Mr. Museveni, you know, and your NRA guys know, yeah, of any reasons why you would be concerned about particular individuals joining legitimate, young, beautiful people who are concerned about the theft of their resources, the theft of their future in the streets of Kampala, with evidence including the National Assembly that you control. You know, what detectives do, just as I said, you get deployed, you pick particular individuals, arraign them in court with evidence. And if Mr. Museveni, you did that, you know me, Mr. Othieno, you know I'm shy. I would not say anything. I may not clap for you, but I may not say anything. And the majority of Ugandans will be on your side. But Museveni is unleashing these crude-looking equipments. The other day I was on one of the sudden flyover, and I was with my fantastic young, handsome grandson, and was looking, saying, "Why, Grandpa, you know, what is that? You know, a round, big thing as if it's a funny aircraft and at a flyover in Kampala." Turns out the whole place, every flyover place is some kind of mini battalion war zone, a place waiting to launch an operation, like Sarah says, to go and repulse Israel from occupied territories. You know? So, no, it's really that. But, you know, as I look through these things, it hurts. Because what we're talking about, you know, is the fact that Ugandans are simply saying enough is enough. The theft that has taken place under Mr. Museveni, and Mr. Museveni goes to write that funny letter, and Mr. Museveni goes to write that funny letter after he's wasted our money in Chankwanzi the other day, pretending that is now the master of corruption. And then I look back at Mr. Museveni's corruption, and I'll say it again. This Mr. Museveni, in 1987, the very same year that he came and tortured me, and you know, yeah, I survived narrowly. So I've gone through these things, by the way. You young Ugandans, you can't survive. Some people will die. You know, while I survived this, many people did not survive in the streets of Kampala. You know, I was talking about northern and eastern Uganda. Many people did not. And many people have not survived Kasese. So all of us will have our times. But I survived that. But you know, in 1987, long, long time ago, none of our fantastic young camera people were yet born. But they're fantastic young guys. And it's their future being played around. You know what? Mr. Museveni ought to account for currency conversion. Currency conversion. That's the theft under Mr. Museveni. You know, in which for 1,000 shillings, he cut off 2 zeros, you know. After cutting off 2 zeros, he takes off 30% of that money. 30% of Uganda's money that Mr. Museveni found in January 1986. Nobody has ever counted for it. That is the first ever corruption. So think about money from the young people's grandparents taken and about their future. And Museveni does not want these people to go out in the streets and demand for those. And if you look fast forward to what has happened, the Karamoja theft, you know, the Temangalo stuff, the Gavi funds kind of stuff. You know, you can go, the ghost helicopter thing, you know, which is linked to his family. You can go on and on and on and on. I think these guys need to have humility, you know. And why I'm saying that, Judith, is because I, as Othieno, and we as Uganda People's Congress, campaigning around these other things, we've been saying that, look, there is a little bit of enough now, but we need to go beyond Mr. Museveni. So meaning, you need to find partners in these NRA bandits so that there's a possibility that we forget about or we heal about whatever happened in the past and we move forward. But what I reject is that mess that I saw yesterday about this young woman being bundled in the streets of Kampala in a demonstration simply because she's complaining that a bunch of criminals in Museveni's regime are facilitating these people. And guess what? Those police officers, you know, who are beating up that young woman, rolling her like an animal, looking as if she was carcass for hounds, like Bessie one time was hounded in a pickup. Go to Neguru police station and see how the young police officers live. You know, go to Rubonge barracks and see how some of the soldiers live. Go to various police stations across the country and you see how most of those people live. They're living like animals, you know. So there's something fundamentally wrong about this. It's not about these young people. It's about these young people and their future. But it's also about those that we fought for, contributed for, and designed that as a country. We also want to live like a normal sense of humanity.
Animals are living a very good life. You go to Kisozi Farm and see.
Kisozi Farm, which
animals which are living there better than me.
Kisozi, which was formerly Uganda's national farm.
Gentlemen, yeah? I need us to wrap up. Let's give the platform to Major Pollar to also weigh in. Where do you think, which direction do you think this protest will take?
I hope the wrapping up doesn't squeeze me out of
No. We want to finish this round, and then we come back, and then we'll have a more.
Now, about the direction the protest will take, I strongly believe that the protest will die. And I've said part of the weapons NRM uses to kill the protest is by meeting the needs of the people. And I repeat, and that is why Museveni just entered on one need, the right to food. Okay? So you're not going to stop the riot by armaments. The armaments, the element of armaments simply come because of the other element of foreign intervention. Otherwise, the best way protest can be handled is by meeting the needs of the people.
But now I get to the
now, they have done what?
That's correct.
Now, the youth have added their voice on corruption. I started by acknowledging there's corruption.
Yes.
So, now that problem identified this problem I have, and in any case, they have identified what we have already seen. Corruption will be dealt with as a way of making youth not come on the street. Now, when we meet the other needs, including freedom of speech, which in every small district in Uganda, there's an FM station, where every morning everybody phone in and abuse government the way they want, and it's okay.
Except when an opposition politician appears on the radios, then the RDCs come and take them
I'm
off.
saying the peasants who is digging in the garden, he has a radio with a phone, and he rings from his garden, and he talks on the radio. Nothing has happened. So those freedom are there, and the people see it. Therefore, to show you how it will die is like it has been before. The youth, if you try to mobilize them, these few who came there, few, but the majority will tell you in Uganda, Kanjije, that let me come back. It will vanish. Kankomeo, it will not come back. The leaders will go alone on the street. The ordinary youth have said, you want me to go? Kankomeo or Kanjije. It will go. It will not come back on the street.
Because they fear the members.
What is your interpretation of that?
My interpretation of this is that you don't suppress the people by power. You suppress the people by meeting their needs. People have sense of consciousness. Consciousness is a materiality. So however much politicians talk their words, the people say, really? You said they say no freedom of speech. You're saying we don't have food. You're saying there's no freedom of this. And that is a person whose consciousness will tell you, I will not walk with you on the street. Not because of Mamba. So now, when you hear closely the speech, including in this room, there's an interchange or exchange of words. Sometimes we are using the words change a demonstration. Sometimes we accidentally use the word which amounts to change of government.
Which one?
So are we talking of demonstration for corruption or what it is? Even then, you know the list of demands, like I said, the presenting need for demonstration in this case was anti-corruption. And it must go. But you even lengthen the list into the list.
There are like 7 items. There are 7 demands on that list.
The list will be long. One silent list, if I may tell you, one silent list was
Museveni.
One silent list was when we move on the street, we pray that the police shoots one and it triggers of something. If the police could not, there's even a possibility of shooting one of the demonstrators by a non-government, a non-state actor.
Where is that coming from?
The intelligence have it. the intelligence have it. So that you
So
see,
where would the gun
we are
come?
going
This is
with
serious
a list.
allegation.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the presenting problem is demonstration against corruption, and the list becomes. It has happened in Kenya.
But
The Kenya state-
where would the gun to shoot
Here it
come
is a
from?
lie.
Because
We
not
now
anyone
have
has
cameras
Come
access.
again?
all over the
Doctor, let me hear.
I'm just curious because this is quite scary. Where would the gun to shoot come from? Because we do have
Don't we have-
not anyone has access to guns.
Yes.
Now,
Not
for
anyone
you
has
to
access
say
to
the guns, to ask the source of the gun, is a very idle and redundant question.
No, because
No,
it's not an.
For
it's not.
example, if somebody was shot in the junction of Budu, would we ask where
My
the gun
God,
comes from?
smugglers.
How many people are shot at night in Kampala every day? For example, our cities may not be ranked as high in the rate of. If you go on Google, you can see the rate of shootings in the whole world. Joburg can be highest. Nairobi is higher than Kampala. Kampala is even if you have not heard, you will know that last night there was a shooting in Kalerwe, or there's a shooting in Nansana. We know all shootings in Kampala. If you go to police record, there are several shootings in Kampala. Where do the guns come from?
Sorry, you can.
Where do the guns come from?
Information, Afande.
Mm.
Your submission presumes that your government has failed to control guns
That's the
in
point.
this country. And I'm asking you to look in the cameras and tell Ugandans that your government has no capacity to regulate, control ownership of guns in this country as demanded by the laws of Uganda.
Instead, I'm telling the camera that my government has the capacity to control and trace guns. And indeed,
So you are the one that
indeed,
will
where it has occurred, where killing has occurred, all attempts
It
has
is
been
you.
made to recover.
So you are the ones that are going to shoot
No, but you recover when it is late.
No, then you
But
are failing
intelligence
to
has
control.
already told you that
have
someone
failed.
is going to shoot.
I wish I make my submission like you.
No, it's
If
okay.
my
Let's give him-
submission is
let's-
so interesting,
it's okay.
get
It's
a
okay.
yellow book like me and write so that you follow. Otherwise, we could become into an anarchy of a debate. And I'm not, in my cadreship, I don't involve into anarchy or debate. I have a notebook so that when Sarah is talking, I take note. When doctor is taking a take, so that I have ample time to respond. What is so special
No,
with
let's
interfering with mine?
let's give you the
So I am
opportunity to
saying,
talk.
if an illegal, and many illegal guns have been used, whether in Katwe, Kawempe, in Nansana, everywhere there's been shooting. You don't ask where
And
the guns
we are
come from.
concerned
But
as
once the
citizens
shooting
about
has
that.
gone, in many cases, the state sets itself to investigation. It gets. But sometimes it doesn't. And this happens all over the world, depending on the capacity to investigate and also the fluidity of the society and the capacity of the criminals. So that is what I'm saying, that the so-called presentation of demonstrations as a never-ending list, with even a hope that I hope it turns violence. I hope they shoot one of us, and then is that the society we want? For that, we shall maintain that, one, corruption is fought. Two, needs of the people are met. But three, insecurity and anarchy is not prevailing.
Thank you very much. I think we'll stop the conversation here for now, and then we'll pick it up when we return.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back. You're still watching Civic Space TV, and this is the Citizens
Yes.
Chat Show. I'm your host, Judith Atim. We're still continuing with our conversation on the Ugandan Youth Demonstration against corruption, and we're trying to draw parallels with the protests by the Gen Zs in Kenya. Well, before we went into the break, we were asking ourselves, what turn could this protest take? And we had a very interesting submission from retired Major Pollar, who was actually, his thinking is that these protests are coming to an end and it is not going to go further than this. I also want you to know that we do here appreciate the fact that we want the country intact. There's no one on this panel, and I think there's no peace-loving Ugandan who would actually want to see this country go up in flames. I think that's a fact. But I also think we are in a cloud of fear. We are in an environment of fear. When you look at the military parades around town from the time, and not just this time around, whenever there are peaceful protests, Ugandans live in an atmosphere of fear. And I also know that from where you sit, fear is actually a tool of control if you're someone in the military. This is something that has been used worldwide. But I also want to say, I think you can't use fear as a weapon of control forever. Mm-hmm. You are trying to avoid a situation where the country descends into anarchy. But also, if you suppress these kinds of sentiments, this voice of dissent, then don't you think you're actually walking into the fires of anarchy? Because pent-up emotions will explode at some point in time, whether you like it or not.
Well, thank you so much. You cut a thin line between a moderator and a participant on this panel. You cut a very thin line, but it's good that you bring out your feelings. After all, you're also a human being. So whether you're a moderator or not, you have where you belong. Yeah, whether you're a moderator or not, you have where
I think maybe it's just how I'm phrasing the question that makes it sound like I am also a participant. But, well, I do see where you're coming from.
Now, you put in so many things, but about the fear, if the deployment causes fear, I would ask fear to who? If the rule of engagement, as dictated by intelligence gathering, defines who the enemy in this case is, then the fear is intended to target that person. For example, the presentation was a demonstration against corruption, and we know that there's a hidden hand behind a motive, an intention using this as a vehicle. That enemy should feel the fear. That enemy should feel the fear, not the youth. And the youth will not be done anything. And it has not. The Mamba will not shoot any youth. But that deployment in response, according to the intelligence gathering and the engagement rules that is defined for every operation has its engagement rules. That fear should be directed to that. And we would be happy if that hidden enemy gets the fear. But there's no way Ugandan army and police can intend to cause fear in the people of Uganda. We have demonstrable history where we ran for a long time programs of demystifying the guns. Because in the past, the guns was used to intimidate the people. It is this same government which said, no, if this gun is used to terrorize the civilians, take them for training, teach them the gun, demystify it, democratize it, let them know it. So it can't be the same government to intimidate. Therefore, going forward, there is no intention to cause a fear at all. Fear, if perceived and felt, is felt by the hidden enemy. But there's no target on the people at all. We, on the contrary, have demystified the gun, taught people in every muchaka to make people know the gun, own it, and know it is taxpayers' gun. And that is what we have done.
Interesting submission. Sarah, I don't know if you would.
In fact,
Just
the
if
more
you
you
want
know
to-
the gun, the more you fear it.
That is another
Is
school.
it-
Joseph wanted to
It's
respond.
extraordinary. You know, just quick thing. Before we went on break, Comrade Awich told the Ugandans that they have intelligence that there is a gunman, some gun people at large, who are likely to go to the demonstrators. I want Comrade Awich to tell us who that person is, and if not, that this gun is going to be taken out of circulation. Because if it's not the case, then Comrade Awich is telling us that Ugandans should be going to bed and waking up in the morning knowing that there's some lone gunman out there associated with the demonstrators or linked to people who are demonstrating, and some of which may be people linked with people from abroad. Because that is something that must be dealt with, because it's extremely important. Because if not, that means after 40 years, and allegedly the nonsense that of demystifying the gun, you know, the gun is much more prevalent in the streets of Kampala and other places in Uganda than ever before. And if I may say so, Judith, I have been luckily enough around for quite some time. I saw the tail end of Idi Amin's regime, and I saw all of Obote government when these NRA guys were busy, you know, breaking people's necks in Luwero. And I saw all the interim administrations of Museveni and the Okello Friends from 1985 until Museveni's regime today. I have not seen a time when there is no apparent enemy known. When Kampala gets armed and equipped, you know, and surrounded by big war machines, like it has happened under this regime, let alone actually within the last 1 week. It has never happened, not even in a means time. And I challenge you, Mr. Museveni, to tell the citizens of Uganda that Othieno of UPC is telling an untruth. So that is an absolute and utter lie.
The congressman has asked me. You asked me, right? So you want an answer?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Your question is about the statement that I made, that in this presentation of a march against corruption, which I acknowledge that NRM acknowledges there's corruption, which I acknowledge is NRM says we must fight it, and which I said we are fighting it by building anti-corruption courts and we are building anti-corruption prisons. Now, I say intelligence report has it that there's a hidden foreign interest to the extent that they're even crying that their money has been stolen. And I thank the thieves because that money was illegal money. So why would an illegal money flood the street to mobilize people for an illegality? Now, I am saying the information intelligence has is that as if there was supposed to be a movement, say from Wandigea through Kampala Road, heading to Parliament, the idea was that police would either act violently and shoot one, or in the event that police cannot shoot, somebody should shoot so that it sets fire. This is what I'm saying. And you see, when you preempt a situation, you may not see the value. For example, this house, if an electrician wires this house and properly doesn't catch fire, you may possibly pay him 2 million. But should this house be wired badly and it catches fire, you'd cost the costian billions of shillings. So you don't know the amount we get in saving the country by preempting what could have gone wrong. Maybe you can now cost it by the fuel that was used around in movement. That is the cost you are seeing, but you can't see. So preemptive cost, you can't quantify. But we have done it, and truth knows that we have done it. Now that you ask me, you give me a chance to talk, something I'd forgotten. Sarah talked so much about charges. I'm not so sure if there was that charge of idle and disorderly. I haven't looked at the charge sheet. But Sarah being a lawyer, I am a lawyer myself, I'm an advocate. Sometimes police officers don't have the technical capacity to prefer charges. But to cure that in law, there is always provision for amendment of charges. Charges can be amended.
Does that take away the income?
So the fact that a provision is law is made to make amendment of charges envisages that there could be lack of capacity in the officers. So to cure that gap in capacity of officers, you make amendment of charges. Sometimes charges are preferred even in a hurry as holding charges. Holding charges when you are doing investigation, especially in a situation of like you have a riot like this. You can prefer holding charges when you have a holding charge, and then you make sure you make proper charges. So amendment of charges are there. We have tried to build capacity in the form of police, but it's a work in progress. And finally, Congressman, you like to address the camera and address Mr. Museveni. Unfortunately, he's not here, but I'm sure he watches you. But I would like to assure you that he's my party chairman. So when you address him, I will always take chance to reply on his behalf.
Just on the charges, the law creates room for amendment of charges under an assumption that as investigations are ongoing and are completed, there could be new evidence. It is that
Not the only reason. The only reason, the other reason is there could be a wrong charge.
What has happened to your yellow book? You were reminding of discipline and your yellow book. Can you make use of it? So,
Yellow.
Sarah, please proceed.
The law assumes that investigations and findings could lead to a different charge after charging. The process of preferring charges has 3 steps. It has the police, whom you can forgive because some of them are not lawyers. It has a DPP. The DPP is actually the police is an investigative arm. It's not a charging arm. It's the DPP to confirm
And
charges.
sanctions.
And those are lawyers. Then you have another arm of lawyers who are the magistrates. Before charges are read in a full court, the magistrate reviews to make sure documents are in order. These are the levels of incompetence that I'm talking about.
After 40 years.
And Ugandans should deserve better.
That's
These
right.
people should be discharged of their duties. So maybe if I may submit now that I don't know that I had any specific question for me, but the presumption that some protesters could be shot. We have had state violence in many of the would-be peaceful protests in this country. And I'll talk about the last one, 2020, where the police acknowledged a murder of 54 citizens, but other actors put them at 100 or more. So we had deliberate shootings, including of a child who had gone to buy airtime, a retired lecturer from Kyambogo who was going to Othieno, a food vendor was the first one to be killed on the streets, single mother vending food from office to office, people who had nothing to do with the protest, but also the continuing criminalization of peaceful protests by this regime must be called out by all Ugandans. It has got to stop. That constitution, if you want, you rewrite it. Or if you want, you be honest like Idamin, overthrow the constitution and rule by decree. Make your own laws. But if we have the laws of the land enshrined in the grand norm of this country, do not overthrow the constitution through your draconian means. The narrative that the people should choose peace versus rights is hogwash. Why is it hogwash? The state, through the pillars of the state, has a duty to keep peace, law, and order in this country. How they should do that is described. You do not usurp the fundamental rights and freedoms of the people in exchange for peace unless you have declared a state of emergency. So if you are cowards that cannot guarantee a right for Ugandans to freely demonstrate, you rule under state of emergency.
Well, let's look at now, you bring an interesting aspect of the judiciary and how it handles issues. How do you think this matter was actually handled? I mean, the arrests and then the state denying bail for charges that actually you say don't exist.
If the regime was honest that they don't have the criminal intent of criminalizing dissent in this country. If they were honest that they are diverting, because I'm still looking at the president's summary statement on his handle. The planners of these demonstrations wanted to do very bad things. The evidence in court will shock many. This was a high quality intelligence-led operation. I have most of the information. If indeed it was true that the state acting on intelligence, high-handed, cutting-edge intelligence information, but mind you, you might never see this information. Cutting-edge intelligence information that the planners were doing bad things. Then they would pick these demonstrators, hold them, and by evening, set them free. But the intention to go ahead, charge, unqualified, non-existent charges, remand, you can't even give people bail, it shows, it goes away from diverting catastrophe that they are claiming. It does not show goodwill in the conduct of state agencies.
Afande, let me address this question to you. Now, the allegations we are seeing that people are actually being tortured and being forced to confess that actually I was sent by so-and-so to protest. How do you respond to that?
Well, as you call it, it's an allegation. It's an allegation. We don't know the truthfulness, the falsehood, but the position on torture, I had already said here that among the non-derogatable rights, one of them is torture. You can't. And Sarah brought it out that as government, we went ahead to pass a law which makes a person torturing another personally liable. In the past, if the police officer comes to arrest and breaks somebody's leg, if you sue that police officer, you would say, sue Attorney General. Me, I was just doing my work. I broke your leg, yes, but I was doing work. Right now, if an officer does that, he's personally liable. And that is the good effort of NRM. We made that law. It was a government-sponsored law. We passed it. Government supported it with all its financial implications. So if there are these rumors, those are rumors. But if it is torture, the position on torture is clear. We don't condone it, and we have passed a law to make people personally liable for the act of torture. It is now, the law says he who alleges has the burden to prove. For example, if a tortured person comes, the law is there to protect him. And that's why I'm saying you do it, you no longer have the defense of Attorney General. So it is rumors, truth will come out.
Yeah, I am amazed by the conspiracy theory by Major. I didn't know that he's a conspiracy theorist. I thought he was a very practical guy who speaks on things that have already been proven. But imagining that when protesters will be moving from Wandegea to Kampala, there will be a policeman who will shoot. If he does not shoot, there will be this funny man who will come and shoot. We are now in a dreamland. That is close to dreaming. I thought a government worthy the 21st century should deal with the issues that are real life situation. These young people they didn't come in secrecy. They first sent a message. I heard yesterday, the other day, the deputy speaker was saying they have not gotten a letter which was telling them that they were coming. But if there is a man who is very busy on social media, it is the deputy speaker. He has been seeing these young men, how they have been organizing. They even set a date, and they have different type of leadership. I thought that that was so. These are people. They are not coming from the bush like NRA did or any other group, FOBA or this DF, which is elusive, and so many others. These are known people with even address. I remember the previous night, there were a lot of arrests, maybe which we need to talk about. There were arrests in NUP headquarters. There were arrests in Machindie, in people's homes, where young people were picked with the crime of planning to have unlawful demonstration. And therefore, I thought that a government of the 21st century, once they know that this man who is going to shoot, because by the time the president talks about something, a president must have evidence, data which is processed into information, and this information, he now comes up with the conclusions. The way you arrest these other guys who are disturbing, and so on and so forth, you go and pick that man who wants to shoot these people.
That's correct.
You go and pick him because the state has monopoly of violence. So they go and, who is this violent man? Who is more than the state of Uganda? Are we saying that now we are defeated by some violent people? So that conspiracy theory, it can be very good for grandchildren who are being inspired to imagine issues. But for the state and the people who are in a government of the 21st century cannot be tolerated. So me, I feel the president there was hitting himself under belt, because unfortunately for many other presidents, he should not be the one creating fear. He's a retired general of the UPDF. Of UPDF. I think he retired when it was UPDF. So he's a retired general of the UPDF. He should be aware of these things. If there is this small man or woman or whoever, let him go and be picked and leave people to do their work peacefully. Because these protesters, by the way, let me tell you, by law, they are supposed to be protected by police. I told you Odomel used to send people. They guard us from the university to go to parliament.
That's correct.
Policemen would be the one in front of us. For us, we are walking, singing our songs.
That's correct.
We would go there.
That's the UPC way,
away.
yes.
So for me, I thought that is the duty. For people who don't know the role of the police, that is supposed to be the role of police. Not running around as if they are marauders who have come to chase some thieves and some... No, not that. Two, I want to imagine that Ugandans need to be given something better. You know, NRM has kept people in these things, thinking that they came from the bush, so they do things in a bush way. We are in the 21st century. The English I speak is the same as the English a British speaks or the American. The only different thing is the accent because of my mother tongue. But we speak the same words, the same everything. We go to school, we study the same things, we are doing the same things. What I do at Kyambogo University is what another professor does in Harvard and other places. So that's why we want a country where we are living as people who are free, people who understand what they are saying, not imagining like my colleague tells me he is starting to restrict us at the level of food and where to sleep. We have surpassed that level.
Yes.
That level is for the first level of development, where people are just thinking animals, in fact, in the bush. For us now, we are in the middle income. Did they say middle income? People who are in the middle income are looking about innovation, and that's why the president, in fact, the president is the source of these problems. He's talking about youth and how they are going to empower them. When it comes to the public, he tells them how to grow mangoes, how to grow banana, how to rear pigs. The other day I saw he was displaying a piggery with one pig in it in this 21st century. Out there, people are thinking about innovation. Innovation in IT, innovation in IA, innovation in so many things. That's where we should be going. And once the youth are innovating in IA, in ICT, they will get jobs. It will even be very easy to capture these people who are stealing our money. Not these things. So for me, I want young people to demand that we need better. We don't need to be told to sleep. You can't sleep. Start driving on the road. I was asking somebody yesterday, was asking me that, now my friend, you are going home, how will you beat the jam? I said, in Uganda, jam, Jam and potholes is no longer a problem. In fact, if you drive on a day and there is no jam and there is no pothole, you have gone to another country.
Be worried.
You have gone to another country. It's not
Be
here.
worried.
Let's get back to you.
So for me, I will give him time to answer. So for me, I want to tell people that let's not start talking about this materiality. By the way, General Major Awich, I don't want normally to go into this Marxist debates because I have a lot of debates in them of materiality and whatever. They are good for certain times. But here we are talking about real things. Do you know how many people right now are worried that their children are not going to get reports in the schools?
Yeah.
Do you know how many people in Mulago who have failed to pay bills for simple ailments of their children and their people? Do you know how many people are worried of where they are going to get money to pay rent in their Mizigo, in Aguru, in everywhere, in Namgonga, and so on? So when young people are arguing that the country is wasting a lot of money which is supposed to build hospitals, money which is supposed to do roads, money which is supposed to buy medicine, money which is supposed to pay teachers, and so many things, and people are building. There is a tycoon in Kampala here who has a house near Pep's Collar there in Pep's Collar, and they have built this big 50-bedroom house. It's just for relaxing with his friend, and he goes on TV. He says, "Okay, this one is not even for sleeping; it's just for relaxing." And we ask, which business do you do? What do you produce? These are the people. Every time there is a supplementary budget, they have money there. I have been telling you about thieves in government. There is money for somebody to do a lab in Kawempe. There is this money for Atiaka, sugar. There is money for... These are the things young people are talking about. In fact, young people, don't go to parliament. Go to State House.
That's correct.
That's where thieves are. Last year, a person was given money to market coffee consumption. The headquarters was supposed to be in Kyambogo University. They came and demolished one of our best buildings where we were keeping our exam scripts. They surrounded it Mabati and disappeared. The year has ended. The year has ended. They wanted to build there the first shop. The first shop is a state-of-art shop. That's how they deceive. If you hear people talking about state-of-art in Uganda of potholes, you know that one is deceiving you. So these guys have now vanished. The year has ended. 2023-24 financial year has ended. Can the president ask this man who was given money which was not even on budget? It was given as it was put in this budget for soldiers is called what? Classified budget. Classified money. He was given money from classified budget to go and market coffee. That man should account for us where that money was spent. And if not, that one, we need to see him in Luzira, not bringing members and threatening people with bombs and what have you. Young people will reach time and drive these members.
That's correct.
I am seeing a situation where young people are going to take up these members because these young people know how to drive, the IT experts, they will drive these members.
And it's their money anyway. Yeah.
We shall not be safe.
Major, you wanted to respond.
I wanted to say, because the doctor addressed me personally, he mentioned my name. He mentioned me in saying that I was bringing conspiracy theory. But he twists his argument and shoots himself in the leg by saying Museveni is going low. By quoting Museveni's intelligence. Now, if I was bringing conspiracy theory, I've alluded to intelligence report. The president himself has talked about intelligence report. How then do you say I'm bringing conspiracy? Why don't you say Awich is talking about intelligence and his president is talking about the same intelligence? So it is not a concoction from Awich. Is it a concoction?
Yes.
How could it have been my concoction when the president has issued a statement? If I had brought this and there was no additional statement from the president citing intelligence report, you'd say it is my concoction. So what conspiracy theory are you talking about? That is wrong. You twist your argument and shoot it in the leg by citing an intelligence report from the president. And you even go ahead by saying the president is going so low. When is the consumer of intelligence? So I am not concocting.
Okay, it is
Because we don't trust him
from
anyway.
the president. Okay,
Then
I've removed it.
So
from
you are amending
so
your
it is a
statement.
conspiracy from the
Just
president,
withdraw
which
it
you are
instead of
propagating
amending.
here. We can't allow.
Instead of amending it.
No, I have nothing to amend.
No, you said you are here before camera.
I
You
have
said
nothing to amend. You are the proper. I had it from
okay.
you.
Now I think I put that right. Now about the 21st thinking.
We have 9 minutes to go, so we need
Yeah,
to wrap
just
up.
about the 21st thinking the good doctor is talking about. For us in the movement, and we do it in government, is that we practically touch that ordinary Opeo, that ordinary Kelo, that ordinary Tumwebaze, that ordinary Mutebi. And that is why I talk of the basic. But we have so many programs of your so-called AI thinking. We have innovation centers. I can show it to you. We are making buses. We are making cars. So for you to think that we should leave out the ordinary person, we should leave out the ordinary person because we are thinking of innovators. We have innovations. We have Ministry for Science, and it is doing a lot of work. We were in Changwas we are moving in buses manufactured in Uganda.
Manufactured.
Yes,
Assembled.
the
Assembled.
buses which take people to Entebbe Airport is that. So we are not silent to your innovation. We have a full ministry and we are producing. We are innovating and we are producing. But does that not make us leave the ordinary person? And that is the materiality you are calling a Marxism. Finally, on this is that Sahara talks of past shootings. The past shooting are believed to have occurred. We have prosecuted people who were known to have shot. We have left it open-ended up to now. If you got evidence of anybody who shot somebody, we are ready to prosecute. And those kind of shooting is what is making us take due diligence. Because in that confusion, people shoot and it is tagged on government. That is why there's a lot of this import, there's a lot of disinvestment for preemptive procedures. Because those killings are done, the same killing I had warned you that it was intended now. We have the police who have done killing, one in Wanega, one in Rubaga. They were sentenced to 45 years and another one, I think, 55 years.
So they killed the 55 people?
No, I'm saying there is an open-ended position now. That doctor, should you bring a evidence that the one who was shot in Kyambogo was shot by Corporal so and so,
is it the
we are
job
ready.
Is it
my job
sorry,
description?
is it the job?
Okay, even if it is not his job, whoever can bring evidence that the death in Nakawa was caused by Corporal so and so, we are ready. It is open-ended. But for that kind of killing, this is why we are making preemptive investment, because people come and kill and target on the government.
Today is a very interesting day. Comrade Awich has actually officially declared that the role and responsibility of investigation, particularly investigation of critical matters involving the deaths of our citizens, lies in the hands of the citizens.
We didn't know that.
You know, but that's exactly what we're trying to say.
We didn't know that. What's the work of the state? It's the work of the state.
That's the work of the state. But
so why is it a new declaration?
But you're suggesting otherwise, that whoever has evidence should bring it. No, we're simply saying that at least in the minimum 54 people got killed by this NRA in 2021, and the matter still is hanging on.
What kind of shifting of this debate?
But anyway,
you have heard, comrade, that even we put police, the police put notice. What is the kind of investigation? Haven't you seen even police putting notice that whoever brings this information, an amount of money is got? How do you expect the government to investigate by spirit?
I just want to close this. I'm just closing this.
How?
You know, this man is.
You think it is investigated by spirit?
This man is from Ntare, and Museveni is from Ntare, and Kagame is from Ntare, and Kagame of Ntare Kagame has just dismissed a minister on suspicion of corruption. Today, 25th, Kagame has done. These terrible boys, particularly, can be very, very terrible guys. Museveni should just do that. Other than that, Museveni and his bunch here in Uganda, they're taking Ugandan citizens to a ride. No, we need to up this game and say no to corruption, starting from State House.
I think this debate confirms that the NRM government is in a Zangzwang
I'll give you water.
This is a German word which basically means that it's your turn to move and all your moves are bad. And it's related to a chess game.
Zang.
In a chess game, there is no pass, there is no skip move, but you must move, and whatever you do, whatever choice you make, will make situations worse. NIM has brought corruption. Now corruption is a monster eating them, and you can see how disorganized they are.
Yeah.
I rest my case.
Thank you
Amen.
very much. Doctor, let's wind up.
Yeah, I just think that Zhang Zhuang is the best to describe this whole thing. But you see, we like our government and want to encourage it to
Yes,
do
we
well.
do.
Because when our government does well, we all get the credit. When our government does bad, we all get the effect. So I really feel that, one, our government should value life, and more so lives of young people. Because young people will make, these old men you see in town here, they have lived their time, they have slept all the sleep in their skull. So we need to protect young people, we need to guide them, and young people, please be careful. Don't be allowed to be killed.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
I have not said it. I am saying that, please, we have a duty to protect this country into one. Many countries have died. Yugoslavia, Sudan, Somalia, and the rest. We don't want a situation where Uganda breaks, the Cholis are running with their mattresses to Gulu, the Bateso are running back to Teso, the Banyankola are running back. We have a duty to protect Uganda into one, and anything that threatens that, the government is committed into ensuring that preemptive steps are taken and Uganda remains one country.
Corruption.
Thank you very much, Dr. Robert Ojambo, Dr. Sarah Bireete, Joseph Othieno, and retired Major Awich Pollar. Thank you very much for your time, your insights on today's edition of the Citizens Chat Show here on Civic Space TV. We'll do return next week with more topical issues and very insightful discussions, same panelists. My name is Judith Atim. Thank you very much for your time.